everybody. My name is Jessica Gordon. Thank you for having me. I'm Algonquin territory. I would like to recognize that we are here. Sorry. I come from Treaty 4 territory. I'm Cree Soto. I am a mother of 5. I take this one around with me everywhere I go, so if you see me out and about, she's one of our eggs still active. Thank you.
And my name is Sheelah McLean, and I'm from Saskatoon as well, which is Treaty 6 territory. And I'm just really honored to be here, and the learning that can happen this weekend, and the alliances that can be made, I think, is really important and really powerful at this time. And so I think what we've decided to do is that both of us will speak about slightly different things, and then we're going to leave lots of room open for questions and discussion. And so we invite you to address that, and it's not that we have all the answers to your questions, but that we'll learn from those questions and be able to find out, hopefully together, some of the answers that we need to be able to move forward. So thank you.
So I don't think I was very prepared knowing that we would be up here speaking, and I feel bad for that, but I think what I want to do is say that anything that we have done from the very beginning has been from the heart. It's for our people, not only Indigenous people, but all of Canada, all of Turtle Island as well. Speaking from the heart that we are in this together. We need to pool our resources, know that not every single one of us has every single answer to move ahead and forward, that if we put our minds together as a collective, we'll be able to take down whatever kind of policies or legislation that are impacting our environment and our people. I've too many times seen a lot of my people, walking on the streets without jackets at all, and that hurts me. I've seen a lot of our people, their children taken away through residential school, through the 60s swoop, and even today with the Child Family Services. So I feel that we need to get back to where we come from as a people, being kind to one another, taking care of each other, reaching out, helping, sharing knowledge as well as our hearts. So I think that's the thing that drives me a lot, to continue with asking for help or pushing ahead a lot of our collective voices as well. I will never say that I speak for the people. I listen. I pass along any kind of information I have to them as well. And I seek assistance from people. In a humble way, I know that we do not have the answers, and we do need help. And I'm looking forward to moving ahead. Coming from where I am from, my parents never spoke their language. My mother, her parents spoke their language. One was Cree, one was Soto. So, they could have taught her 2 different languages as well, but I don't know my language. My kids don't know their language. We're in this city. I have lived on the reserve for much of my younger life. Now, I see the need that we need to have a lot of our traditional components, our culture, our language instituted. So that's a lot of what the resurgence should be about. Sharing knowledge, forging our way ahead, and coming together as a collective. I also see, coming from the community levels, we have to work within our communities, within our nations together to decide, okay, this is the way we want to move forward now, and we need to all help each other move forward as well. That's part of the resurgence. Let's see. Some of the other plans that we've tried to have ideas with is facilitating those voices, not necessarily saying this is the way it should be done, this is the way we're going to move forward. We want to hear those voices from the grassroots levels, even for the younger kids. They say that they want to learn their language, well, we're going to listen to them. We're going to help them find those solutions. We're going to ask the community members, the leadership as well, to use their resources to help us get back to that way that we should, to help each other. So that as well as part of the resurgence plan. Trying to think of what else we could. I work way a lot better with fielding questions, dialogue back and forth, because I never want to come out here and spew a bunch of information or spew my opinion onto anybody. So I'm looking forward to the dialogue instead of standing up here. My security blanket.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe some of the things that I could talk about is the learning that I've done over the last 10 years working with Indigenous teachers who have taught me about the impact of colonization, about white settler identity and how we're positioned differently because of our history, about Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous rights to lands and resources, and that nation-to-nation relationship is something that has to be reinstituted. I have learned over the last 10 years about a history of violence towards Indigenous people and their lands and territories, and how that needs to be acknowledged and isn't part of the grand narrative or discourse in Canada, that we've maintained a history of sort of innocence and goodness in spite of ongoing attacks and violence and genocide, and that to begin this relationship and to begin any kind of movement, that has to be acknowledged. And so I Don't Know More has tried to talk about that when we talk about Indigenous sovereignty and environmental protections, that core relationship or that key relationship is the relationship that always needs to be at the center of our discussions. And this has been 400 years of ongoing violent colonialism. And one of the things I wanted to talk about that was mentioned this morning is that this is an ideological war that we're in. And what I've recognized and what I've learned from my teachers is that really the capitalism and the corporatism, the rampant racism and misogyny, that the nationalism and the militarism, that these are colonial pursuits that have always been here, that really, and I think we can recognize that these are fascist ideologies that may be overt now, they may seem more extreme to some of us, but really, that is our history, that is our story, and that the stories that we hear of Canadian innocence and that identity is actually a story that's been created and maintained for a very long time through all of our institutions, through government, through education, through our justice system, that story is so powerful that it infuses all of us as Canadian citizens with an identity that is not the core of our truth here. That as a third-generation white settler, my family has benefited from colonialism in ways that settlers of color are positioned differently, and of course in ways that Indigenous peoples are positioned differently. So what we talk about a lot and what we think about a lot is, how do we work across these differences that have been created by colonization through policies and practices, differences of race and class and gender and sexuality and ability. And those divisions are so powerful that, of course, coalition groups, and it was mentioned this morning, have difficulty working together. I was so excited when we were invited to come here because I realized this is a chance for us to see some core goals. What I do see with the Harper government is that he's able to take a variety of different interests across the right and put them under the umbrella of profit. And so people who have a variety of different positions within the conservative agenda are coming together under the umbrella of profit, and you can see how powerful that is. And that really those fascist ideologies are really what we're talking about. And so my role in activism has been in Saskatoon, and it has been as an educator and a teacher. And it's been so important to us to see education as the goal, building consciousness in Canadians as the goal, building consciousness in Canadians about Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous rights, and that this is Indigenous land, and consciousness about what's happening to our environment. And I think we were both really surprised at, all four of us, at how quickly this grew. And we haven't had a lot of time to adjust to the movement and how quickly it grew. And as you can see, none of us are experts in social movements. This is a grassroots movement. And so we're working with media with some knowledge of the problem with corporate media, but certainly not experts in that. And we're working with other groups with some knowledge about their goals, but again, this is a process. And everyone that's come to us, and people have already come to us today and offered their solidarity and support, means so much to us, because we know that that's what it's going to take to keep this movement going. And it can be under the umbrella of Idle No More, it can be allied with Idle No More, it can be in solidarity with Idle No More. There's so many different things happening now. Some people locally and globally are working closely with Idle No More, and some people are working on their own. You can see how leadership has just activated across Canada. And I mean, we started in Saskatoon knowing that we wanted to take the petitions, and take the ideas and get as many Canadians to understand these bills as we possibly could. But we also recognize that these bills are symbolic of something much bigger, and a long history of this happening across this continent and, of course, other spaces. And so I think the solidarity is coming because other groups are seeing that this is their story as well, and that these are their fears as well, and they're coming at it with their own gifts and skills and knowledge, and activating it in a variety of different ways, from lawyers to artists to activists who have laid the groundwork for this. Like, we acknowledge that there are activists that have been working their whole lives, and obviously this room is a testament to that have laid the groundwork for this movement to spring. But I think so many people ask us, like, why do you think it grew so quickly and became a global movement? And of course, some people say it's social media, Facebook and Twitter that we use. That's part of it. Some people talk about the fact that this is, again, a shared story, that these are shared concerns, and of course that's part of it. But we've also talked about it being a spiritual movement, and that there are things about this movement that are inexplicable. But we know that elders have come to us over and over again saying that they have been praying for the movement and having ceremonies for the movement, and we believe that that spiritual element to the movement is so key, and it's the core and the heart of the movement. Education, building consciousness, and building solidarity is a spiritual act. That fighting oppression, racism and classism and sexism, that is a spiritual act. Those are spiritual acts. And so when we act together to fight that kind of colonial oppression, I think that that's where the spiritual element is activated, and it can be activated through the leadership of everyone. And we worry about, grassroots maintaining their voice through this. Like, that's a concern for us. And so as we work and talk with you, we hope that you have some really solid ideas about how we can grow, how we can somehow work with corporate media, although I don't know if that's possible, how we can, do justice to the beauty of this movement, but maintain that grassroots part, which is, all four of us are moms, and that's our first identity, and all four of us are teachers and learners, and that's part of our identity as well.
I guess one of the things that I've noticed why maybe Idle No More has grown so globally is because there are the grassroots people that never had that chance to, go on board with any of these other activist movements and social movements, because they didn't know how to wiggle their way in there. They didn't know how to, become active. And now, because of Idle No More, they see, oh, okay, it's just the regular Joe that's able to, coordinate an event, coordinate a rally. So I believe that, too, is the reason why it's gotten so big, because everybody, not just seasoned activists, not just seasoned, social justice workers, it's everybody is able to contribute, and I think that's the beauty of it as well. is that everyone can contribute, and it doesn't have to be just the seasoned activists. And I mean, we're a living testament to that too, because I've never stood in front of, you know, this type of forum before, and this is an amazing feeling, and we haven't really had the time to let it sit in, to let it process that, oh my God, this is a global movement, and there's so many people that have always been involved in this, and that are going to continue, and that will never give up, and that's our feeling too, is as 4 women, is that, you know, there's no way that we could stop. There's no way that we could ever stop that. That's where we need to help each other, you know, keep this movement going, keep all of this mobility up, you know, your activism, your causes, you know, we're all in this together. Once again, I keep saying that, but it's so true. So let's get to it. So we're prepared now. Well, not prepared, but we're going to take some kind of questions or get some kind of dialogue now if anybody has questions. I don't know if those microphones are ready or if you guys just want to yell from your seats or...
Microphones, because I have...
Microphones, because otherwise we cannot translate.
Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to...
Or comments or things we want to...
I have a quick question.
Let me just grab my...
About the innocence of Saskatoon. Can you tell us
You don't get translated otherwise.
less innocent?
Can't understand.
Test 1, 2.
I heard the question. I'm not sure what you mean by less innocent.
Well, why did you decide to do this?
Oh.
Do you mind reframe
Okay.
the question so the translation can happen in minutes?
And then we'll get to this question. I noticed you getting up right away, but we'll just grab this question first. So his question was, I'll try and paraphrase, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that you'd like to know why we began any kind of activism in this. So I guess what we were doing is we had seen a lot of these policies getting pushed through, and myself, I seen like tons, and I thought, what the heck is going on? There's all of these policies, all of these bills going through all at once. What they're doing, I felt, is that they're distracting us. You know, this group is going to go this way, and this one will go this way. So I thought, okay, well, you know, I seen Bill C-45 as affecting everybody, and so we all got together and we decided, well, this is the best way to kind of grab attention to all of the other bills. So I guess that is why we focused first on Bill C-45. Is that, okay.
My question is, what is it that we can do, or that you have been doing, to get these traditions and languages back into the school system?
So his question was, what can you do?
What can we do?
What can we all do to...
You have been doing, but...
Yeah. And what have we been doing to get languages back into the classrooms?
Languages and traditions and the other teachings. Like I remember taking Ojibwe.
Yeah. Well, I guess pressuring your own school boards too, but as well as bringing back that sovereignty, letting your community know that this is important, that our languages are important, our culture, our traditions are important. It does have to start at home. I believe that we should start at home. Then that pressure could grow and grow, and then, you know, the school boards will say, oh, okay, look at them, they know what they want. You know, we have to be a sovereign people to be taken seriously as a sovereign people. So once we start practicing that at home, people will see, okay, let's take them serious. If they want to pull their kids out of school because we're not, you know, respecting their traditions or their culture or their language, you know, them too, they'll lose out on money for, you know, tuition as well. So if we want to teach our own, I think that's probably the best way to do it. Thank you.
A lot of movements use Gene Sharp's ideas, of like non-violence, direct action. I think he put forth like 198 versions of how to be like have direct actions and non-violence. I was wondering if you guys looked at his work at all. Like he wrote books like From Dictatorship to Democracy, and he has been helping movements, I think, since the 70s, like worldwide. And I was wondering if you guys pull from any of his works consciously. I know that subconsciously, in a lot of like the red flag or like using colors and stuff like that is part of like what he puts forth. But I was wondering if you guys consciously looked at his work at all.
I haven't personally, but I can't speak for Nina and Sylvia and Jess. I know that in the 3 months since we had our first rally, we have drawn on different things that are being sent to us, articles, pieces, but no, we haven't had time to look at bigger opportunities to look at some of the history around what's been said and what can be used. So that's something that we can do.
Yeah, I think like his stuff's really really good. Like he's kind of saying like if you were to turn violent, the government knows how to deal with you. But the government doesn't know how to deal with love or humor, like the whole Ottawa scat thing. Like they don't know how to deal with those things. So it's like taking, you have to remain nonviolent for the ball to be in our field. And I think that he has a lot of really good work.
And I guess to speak to that, I know we've had some people in the movement that feel very strongly that we want to maintain that nonviolent identity, which we have. There are some people, like our lead coordinators and the founders, who feel that things like blockades can be used as an important strategy, and others that feel strongly that that might not be the best strategy. So we haven't come together yet to talk about what that means, but I do think that there are a variety of different strategies that need to be used by people who have that background information and who know how to use that, and I think we really support that. But you're right, I've noticed that this government in particular doesn't know what to do with Ottawa no more, because it comes from such a place of education and love and community building and working across difference. And because it's coming from that place, I feel like they have no idea what to do.
It's like the eagle and the condor prophecy. Like it's like the divine feminine energies now that are kind of.
Well, it's interesting because I had an elder from Hawaii, an indigenous elder from Hawaii, come into my classroom last year, and she was telling my class that really this idea of the end of the world is not that the world is going to end, but that there's going to be a shift. And that shift is really significant. And she told me that she's gone to conferences all over the world where elders all over the world are prophesizing the same thing. And so I think we've seen the buildup of that shift with various social movements across the globe. And so I hope that Ottawa More is a piece of that, a part of that shift.
It is.
Yeah, thank you. But we'll have to get the title of that book and from you before you
Well,
leave.
Gene Sharp, like all of his work.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, yes. I'd just like to say I think this is a really positive development, just the social forum. I think it's great that this is happening. And, I think it's fantastic that we're addressing racism and we're finally recognizing that Aboriginal peoples, they're not just a minority who's just sort of around kind of a decoration. They're distinct peoples, they're nations like every nation in Europe. But as important as it is to recognize the nationhood of Aboriginal peoples and their differences and the distinctness of their culture, I think we have to look at what is common to all cultures. And, we've heard a lot about racism, but we haven't heard anything about women and the place of women. And we have to recognize that, I don't claim to speak for women. I certainly understand I have no right to speak for women, but I think we all recognize that we can't have social justice if we ignore 50% of society. So, thanks, love dude. So my question is, how should social movements such as I Don't Know More work to integrate women's voices and women's rights?
I guess, well, from an Indigenous woman's perspective is that we are mothers, respecting that we are life givers, and keep stating that across all of our social movements, that, you know, if it wasn't for us, we wouldn't be around. But I mean, seriously, we are life givers, we are protectors. Inherently, that's what we do, that's what we'll continue to do, and maybe just keep up that dialogue and knowing that respecting the women and including them and having them involved is very important.
Do you have anything, just a brief follow-up, do you have anything to remark on about the particular violence against Aboriginal women, the high rate of disappearances, the abuse and the neglect of the authorities?
No, thank you for your question, and I think a lot of people have commented on the fact that the founders and all the lead organizers have been women, and that's something that they've noted and been really excited about, that the movement is really led by women and led by Indigenous women, with allies supporting. And I know that definitely on February 14th, for instance, we've been invited to be part of V-Day with I Don't Know More, which is a day that acknowledges violence against women in a patriarchal society like Canada, and acknowledges the misogyny as part of our society and normalizing that. But we're also going to focus on vigils across Canada on missing and murdered Indigenous women, because of course we know that that has been something that our government has not acknowledged. We know that there have been calls for inquiries, and we know that they're positioned differently in terms of how they're racialized in a colonial context, and so that violence has become normalized. And yes, that's something that's been part of our discussions and part of our discourse, and that, again, we've been working for 3 months, but we know that there's some things like that that need to be added and highlighted. And so February 14th, you'll see an I Don't Know More call out for violence against women and looking at missing and murdered Indigenous women, not just even across Canada, but really globally, that it's an issue in our nation and also around the world.
Thank you.
So I just want to begin by commending you on the action that you took and what you stimulated growth, obviously across the nation, crystallizing a lot of sort of latent feelings of discontent. So it's been really amazing what you guys have made happen. In that context, though, and also in the larger context of what we're talking about here, as a building space and a space where we want to talk about the structure and dynamics of social movements, I want to open up a bit of a conversation about the structure and processes of I Don't Know More as we move forward. And this part of the genesis for this is that, conversations that I've had with local I Don't Know More organizers in Vancouver. And really, my question relates to how you see the power structure and how you see decisions being made and brand associations relating. Like, in other words, if we're making decisions about more militant action, how should those decisions be made such that it's still representative of the I Don't Know More fabric? Also, specifically to the founders, right? I mean, to what extent do you guys see yourself as having a leadership role and being involved in larger strategic decisions? So there's questions relating to sort of centralization of power versus decentralization, right? Which are part of the structure of kind of new movement dynamics and are issues that we're going to have to resolve if we're going to take this whole process to the next level, right? So that's a lot of questions, but I think you guys just generally get a flavor of what I'm kind of asking.
Well, and in a moment, I'll let Jess speak to. She has really important ideas to share about grassroots and maintaining grassroots input into what's happening. But I can say that the four of us have talked a lot about this because we hear from people both critiques that we're not speaking enough and that we're speaking too much. sure that word, taking too much leadership, or why aren't you taking any leadership? So we're in a position where we know that we are facilitators. People come to us to talk about the movement and ideas, and we have those dialogues. If that can be seen as leadership, I guess it is, but that's not really how we see ourselves. We work really hard to maintain the core of what we first started, which is education, and focusing on Indigenous sovereignty, and focusing on attacks to the environment. And you can see that as it spread, those ideas become divergent. They spread, and so that people will say, I don't really know what it is, or I don't really know what it's about. And that's partly the problem with corporate media, but it's also a problem with people are taking it up in their own way and activating what they think is important in their own communities, and that's the beauty of a grassroots movement. So I think all we can do is continue to work with people to contact us, continue to try and do the work that needs to be done, try and continue to focus on those original goals. In terms of an organization, one of the things that we had concerns about is having just a little bit more structure. For instance, there were people coming to us and asking if they could give us donations. Well, that needs to be really transparent, and that needs to be something that's done in an organization where maybe we become a nonprofit organization, that maybe we have chapters in different provinces, and I know Hawaii's already come to us and said, we would like to have a chapter here. What would that look like? We don't know. We're still in conversation about that, but I think it's tricky to maintain organizational structure, but also that original grassroots where people feel like they have ownership of it and they can activate it in any way that they want. So many people have spoken in the media, and then the media will call them, they're the spokesperson, they're the and honestly, I'm very comfortable with that personally, because I think people are speaking from what it means to them. However, as you can see, what happens is then there's a variety of different messages, right, that go out to the public, and we realize that that's a concern as well. So I'm, being a great politician right now, I'm not really clearly answering your question, but I am. I'm learning. But I am saying that those are things that definitely we've been thinking about, and I think that it is so big now that to have the illusion that there can be control, I think would be ridiculous. It'd be ludicrous. There is no one person or one group that can control what's happening now. People need to take leadership, and people need to create spaces where they can activate it in a variety of different ways. And I do really think, though, the idea of, like, as soon as you start talking about things like, giving some kind of a donation, that's where we become concerned that we have to put a little bit more structure so that that's transparent and so that people feel good about supporting the movement in that way, in that particular way. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, totally. So I just want to say one thing, and I'll pass the mic on, which is that I wasn't expecting kind of a final answer, but I personally am kind of a process and structure guy, and what I'm going to ask you to do is just like, this is a dialogue, and that is the process. So I'm wondering to what extent you're willing to create the structures to have an open dialogue, right? So in other words, create the spaces, whether they be online or whatever, to start talking about the future and be engaged, and make that really the infrastructure for I Don't Know More, right? Like a national conversation about the movement itself. So I'm going to suggest like that would be an important infrastructure piece, and I'd love to support that and work with you guys to that.
I guess one of the processes for community dialogues that we had in mind for quite some time now was, have the communities discuss what they felt was important to them, bring that up to a national level, either a national forum where everybody could discuss their best practices, the way that they feel best to move forward, and then take that information back to their community and share it there and begin implementation from the ground up. So that was one of the ways that we could help facilitate that process. As for any kind of organizational structure, I believe I Don't Know More would be just that, somebody to help, or a place to help facilitate any of that information, knowledge sharing, implementation too as well. So we'd be more of a central go-to people, and then we help facilitate them to other directions, either language, experts, environmental protection experts, industry, pressure groups, stuff like that. So once again, like we're still trying to formulate the best way to go about it, but to include grassroots voices at that community level as well. That's where I feel is going to have the most impact, those voices. Yeah, I didn't notice this too.
J'encouragerais qu'il y ait plus de gens qui se lèvent. I think there's enough. We cannot take more questions than what people are.
Well, maybe I think like a forum like this would be good to have. Again, like what you had mentioned, a dialogue where at a national level everybody would be able to come share questions, share kind of best practices as well. So maybe that would be the next action that we could put forward as I Don't Know More, is that we could all have that national dialogue or international dialogue.
Can I say a few words real quick? Because it has a very, what the Spirit's called, great importance of this I Don't Know More and the proper understanding of what it's for our children. They say, even though you are recognized as the founders, but through me and through the people of 6 nations, to your people, especially the women, who are known as the title holders of Turtle Island. They say that is the reason why it was woman generated, to help empower the woman, to put her back into her place as head of the community fighters or the family fighters. They also want you to know that they are going to be sending another ceremony in conjunction with this that will have to do with the women. They say they will not force the women to come, but they ask the women to come to make this possible. And they explain why there was 4 main women, as in the 4 directions of the earth, which ties into what they call the great tree of peace and their white roots that go forth in the 4 directions. For that any one person or any nation that shall seek peace, you shall follow this white root back to the tree of peace and enjoy what the true meaning of Scotland from the Creator has intended for us. So when they say that this I Don't Know More, what that was about is how this corporate government and what they're trying to do with the Canadian right. It's making so that illegally but legally they can do what they want and take your right away to say, hey, no, you're not going to hurt my children because of the things that they want to do for that money, if you can understand that. And that's what they say. It's important for all nations and all races of life to be aware of that. Because that sickness that is here, that greed, which will control them, and that they see now that a lot of other people understand this greed, and that the things that are coming together, and this is why this earth was given that opportunity to continue, because they say that they have shown you, like the asteroids and everything, how close this Mother Earth has come to that punishment of the children. And they're happy, and they like to send their thanks to the women that have stood up and accepted that gift. They say even though that you were, like, according to the people of the Turtle Islands laws, that you were kind of like naked without the rights, but therefore you held our blood and some of our beliefs. Therefore you were selected to bring this movement forward, to show what the goodness of peace and that good mind can achieve. Because they say that you seem to think it has gone around the world, but it has not yet. For it shall further march across the big waters until there is to be peace if the human race shall choose it. And by the looks of it, we're going to do good. And with this understanding of how we come together and use what they say, the pen is mightier than the sword. So therefore they shall enhance this gift to you, so that you can do it peacefully and give that peace and understanding and a better way to teach your children how to handle problems. And it will grow, like they're showing this groups, when they go around the world, because I got to worry about when the voice of the Six Nations people will soon, in the coming days, will rise, and then your ears will be clean, and then your mind can be clean. After your ears are clean, your mind will be clean, and for you to freely, what peace is about, that free will to choose of whether you will accept peace, or what I guess they say is kill your mother. That choice, free will be up to you. But we are to warn you to, not a bad warning, but to give you a heads up. When the voice of the Six Nations, when you shall hear this voice, clean your ears and your minds, so that your heart can accept the peace that will follow that, and that will guide you to that. And to the women, and hopefully they will do their duty and bring this other ceremony that should be coming into place in the coming days to help your children and all of us. As me, as a traditional person, I am not complete unless there are the women that are there. I have been taught from the day one that the women have a say, and therefore, if I have to stand out there and push them back so they won't have to push you, then so be it. I am willing to do that. I would sooner have the pen replace me trying to hurt my brothers and sisters who don't understand. And that has to catch on to the world so that they can do away with the guns and enjoy life and enjoy peace and enjoy that love. That is what it's supposed to be down here on Sheelah, on Mother Earth. So go and do this work for them. And we say again, to give that gratitude, that it shows that the women are the heart and the strength of the nations. And through you, there shall be peace. Done it.